Hi everybody, it's Miss Wilson, and today we're going to be talking about book genres. So the genre of a book tells what kind of book it is. So book genres are just the different types of books that we read. So the two main book genres that there are, we already have talked about, and that would be fiction, which means fake. It's made up by the author. Usually it's some kind of story. So the examples here are Pete the Cat, Smiley Shark, and the BFG. And so just keep in mind that fiction books are made up. And then the opposite of that would be nonfiction, which are books that are not fake. They're true. The author is usually trying to inform you, giving you facts, information about something that's real. So, for example, a book about Abraham Lincoln, volcanoes, or sharks. All of those things are real. Okay, so we're going to talk about now the different types of fiction. There are many different fiction genres that are all different types of books that are made up. So the first one is realistic fiction. And you might notice in the word realistic, it has the word real. And that's not because the story is real, that it really happened. It's because it looks like something that could happen. So realistic fiction is a made-up story using realistic characters with realistic events taking place in modern times. And modern times just means in the present, like right now. So a good example of realistic fiction would be the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books, because the main character is it's a made-up character, but he is like any student that could exist in real life. And the things that happen to him are realistic. They could happen in real life. There's no magic. There's no talking animals. It's similar to what could happen. So it's realistic fiction. And kind of the opposite of that would be fantasy. Fantasy books are modern stories including elements that are impossible, such as fairies, talking animals, or magical powers. So think Harry Potter. Harry Potter is fantasy. It happens in a setting that is completely made up, that is not realistic at all. Somewhere like Hogwarts could never really exist in real life. There's magic, there's made-up creatures. Those are the kinds of things in a fantasy story. You could also think about the Chronicles of Narnia. That's fantasy, or Percy Jackson, if you've read that series before. Those are all fantasy stories. The next fiction genre is mystery. A mystery is a suspenseful story about a puzzling event that is not solved until the end of the story. So in a mystery, a lot of times there's a character that's called a detective, and they are trying to solve a problem or a crime sometimes. So something might go missing, or something mysterious happens, and the whole time during the story they're trying to figure it out. And then at the very end, the detective usually figures out and solves the mystery. So if you've ever read a Cam Jansen book, that's a mystery. There are A to Z mystery chapter books, Nancy Drew, Encyclopedia Brown. Those are all some popular mystery stories. This next genre is my favorite, and that is historical fiction, which is a fictional story, so it's made up, with real and invented characters that takes place during a historical time. So think about the Magic Treehouse books, how Jack and Annie go back in time to places in history, and sometimes they experience events that really did happen in history, and they meet characters that are based on people that really did live, but it's still fiction because the story is made up, and it's also not possible for people to really go back in time. So it's definitely fiction, but you get to learn a lot about history and historical people when you read historical fiction. Okay, the next genre is a fairy tale, which I'm sure all of you have read some kind of fairy tale before. It is an old story passed on with magical, fanciful characters, some good, some evil, with a happily ever after at the end. So in the picture, you might recognize this is Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf. That's a popular fairy tale. The Three Little Pigs is also a fairy tale. Sleeping Beauty is a fairy tale. A lot of times there are actually fairies in a fairy tale. There's castles, princesses, princes, kings and queens. That kind of setting is usually in a fairy tale. The next one is science fiction, which you may not have heard of before, and that would be a story that blends futuristic technology with scientific fact and fiction. So any story about aliens is science fiction. If it's about robots or any kind of futuristic setting that is supposed to look like the future of Earth would be science fiction. If you've ever heard of the Hunger Games, that's a very popular science fiction series. So if you ever read a book about aliens or robots or anything like that, you know you're reading science fiction. The next one is a folk tale, which is similar to a fairy tale. So folk tales are an old story with an important message that was initially passed on by word of mouth. So in the picture you can see an older man that's telling a story to three little kids. So folk tales are very old stories coming from back way in the past when people didn't even write down stories. They just would tell them, maybe sitting around the fire outside sharing stories, and the stories got passed on from grandparents to parents to children over time. So some popular folk tales we still know today, like Cinderella is a folk tale. Beauty and the Beast is actually an old folk tale from a long time ago. And if you remember when we learned about the Native Americans, the legends that they told and passed down to us, those are examples of folk tales as well. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some different nonfiction genres. And remember that nonfiction means it's true, it's not made up. The author's trying to teach you something usually. So the first one is informational texts or books. So that is texts that provide factual information to readers, such as sports, history, weather, space, animals, science, geography, or careers. So you can read an informational book about pretty much anything, and the purpose is to teach you about that thing. The next kind of nonfiction genre is a biography, and that is the story of a real person's life that is written by another person. So it's just telling about what an important person in history did and giving facts about their life. So in the example, you might recognize Martin Luther King Jr. in the picture, and these people have a little poster. It says, "I have a dream." So there are lots of biographies out there about Martin Luther King Jr. because he was such an important person. People want to read those and learn about his life. The next one is similar to a biography, but it is called an autobiography. Now, auto is a prefix that means self. So it's like a self-biography because you write it yourself. It's the story of a real person's life that is written by that person. So it would be like if you were to sit down and write a story about your life and everything that's happened, that would be your autobiography. So some popular autobiographies that exist are Benjamin Franklin wrote down everything about his life. Helen Keller wrote an autobiography. And so those important people were just giving facts about their own lives. The last genre we're going to learn about today is poetry. And poetry can be fiction or nonfiction, just depending on what the author wants to write about. So Poetry, or a poem, is a verse written to inspire thoughts, actions, or emotions. Usually there are rhyming words, especially in a kid's poem, but not all poems have rhymes in them. In the picture, it's kind of showing you a famous poem that says, "Roses are red, violets are blue, the honey is sweet, and so are you." So that's an example of a poem. I'm sure you've heard several poems before. Okay, and that's all the genres we're going to learn about today. Just remember, book genres are important because they help us organize books. They can help us find the types of books we want to read. So when you walk into a library at school or the public library, it helps to know what kind of books you're looking for, what kind of genre do you like, because that's how they're organized in a library. And so if you're looking for a fiction book, you would go to the fiction section. Or if you're trying to research something, then you would need informational books, so you would go to that section. So it really does help to know what genre you're looking for when you go to read a book.